When you get right down to it, to understand the United States government, the first document you've got to understand is the United States Constitution. The document is really pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. It's laid out in some basic articles, the first three of which are crucially important. I got this transcript from a place called the National Archive. I would recommend to you very strongly that you might bookmark that, because it is an outstanding source for a plethora of information you might be needing as we go through the course. Article 1 deals with the legislative branch, the legislative branch being vested with the power to make the laws. Section 2 talks about the House of Representatives. Now I'm going to rush through this and get through some things very, very quickly. It talks about the length of term being 2 years. It talks about a minimum age of 25. It talks about a U.S. citizenship requirements and a residency requirement in the state wherein they were elected. But this is kind of interesting. This is crucially important. Remember, when this document was written, one of the huge issues already dividing the states was slavery. The northern states, the free states predominantly, did not think slaves should be counted for the purposes of representation. The South disagreed, of course, and said that they should. This was a very rancorous issue, and it took a long time to reach a compromise that no one was fully satisfied with. It is so important it's highlighted in this text in blue, which I'm not sure you can clearly see, so I'm going to read it to you. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to their representative numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, that means indentured servants, and excluding Indians not taxed. Notice this, Native Americans are left out. 3/5 of all other persons. Those all other persons are slaves. This is the 3/5 compromise. Basically, 3/5 of the slave population in slave states is being counted for the purpose of representation, but also for the purposes of taxation. Now, further requirements for the voting and so forth, and the population requirements are mentioned there, but again, those had to be adjusted to time. The last part of this is kind of important. It reads in the last line of Section 2, Article 1, the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Remember, impeachment is simply accusing an official of a crime in office, which can lead to their trial and perhaps conviction and punishment. All right? It further says in Section 3 that the minimum age for a United States Senator is 30 years. Their length of term is 6 years, and only 1/3 of the Senate will come up for re-election in every 2-year cycle. Furthermore, when this was first adopted, the senators were elected by the members of the separate state legislatures, not by the general population. That changes with the later constitutional amendment. Okay, it also says down here that I shall read this directly, the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. Now, this is very timely and important for you to understand. Listen carefully. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not exceed further than to remove from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. That statement you might be hearing a lot more about in the upcoming days and weeks. Section 4 has to do with the meeting times of the Congress. Section 5 has to do with the conduct of the members of the Congress. Section 6 has to do with the compensation of the members of Congress. This Section 7 is very important that you understand. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. It goes on to say that any other bill introduced into the lawmaking process can be introduced in either the Senate or the House. It also outlines in this paragraph the procedures by which the president can administer both a formal and a pocket veto and how those vetoes can be overridden. Now, Section 8 is hugely important. Section 8 is where you find what are called the delegated or enumerated powers. There's an entire sort of laundry list of things here that are set aside specifically for the national government. No other level, be it state, county, or local, can employ these powers. They include, and I'm going very quickly, the power to borrow money on the credit of the U.S., to regulate commerce, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, to coin money, to punish for counterfeiting, to establish post offices and post roads. I love this one. To promote the progress of science and the useful arts, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is specifically mentioned in Article 3, but further lower courts are not specifically defined. All right? This one's huge. The power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. The last time Congress issued a formal declaration of war was in December of 1941, when the United States entered World War II. Even though we have been in military conflicts, many military conflicts since 1941, that is the last time the Congress formally declared war. Here's another thing very important to understand. To provide for calling forth a militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. It further reads in the next paragraph. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the U.S. Interesting stuff, because later when you and I talk about the Bill of Rights, Amendment 2, which provides for us the right to keep and bear arms, also makes mention of the need for a well-armed and well-regulated militia. You see this mentioned also here in Article 1, Section 8. Now down here, and I know I'm skipping over some things, be aware. This one is huge. The very last statement in Section 8, Article 1, is referred to as the necessary and proper clause, also sometimes referred to as the elastic clause. It reads, to make all laws that or which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. This has been used as an umbrella for the federal government to make a huge range of laws in order to enforce and carry out the laws that are necessary to impose or exercise the powers given to the national government in this article of the Constitution. Further down in Section 9, some things that are prohibited. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. Abraham Lincoln received a lot of criticism from some when he suspended the writ of habeas corpus during the Civil War, but he did. Further things that are not permitted, no bill of attainder, nor ex post facto law. We'll talk more about that. There's also restrictions on the powers to impose tariffs and so forth as far as the states are concerned. I love this last line in Section 9, Article 1, which reads, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office or of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title, or any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. The anti-monarchy sentiments of this document are probably as clear in that single line as anywhere in the Constitution. Section 10 starts to lay down some further restrictions on what the states can and cannot do. I know I rushed through that, and there's some things in Section 1 that are hugely important that I didn't bring up. Here's what you need to do. Read Article 1 carefully. I just covered the entire article with you. But point out to me, what did I gloss over that deserved more attention than it received? Let's talk about that the next time we get together. Have a great evening. GoPro, stop recording.